I kind of wonder how you view Sinner and Alcaraz as a like compared to their peers, and how that compares to like how Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray were to their peers. Do you think that they are as far apart as those guys were, or you think that they might still have some work to do to kind of create that dominance?
I don't think they're as far apart. Um, they are a step ahead. You could argue like maybe even a step, two steps ahead in terms of it. The reason it's not so much like what they're doing in one moment that you can't say that they're that far apart. It's just when you realize how far apart somebody is, it's because they've done it for a long period of time, right?
Okay.
Because you'll go through the moments of playing well, not playing your best, but you're still winning tournaments, right? Nadal, when there was years he was winning the French without losing a set, right? And then there will be ones where he's surprised in the first round playing a five set or 2-3, but then still finds a way to win the French that year. That's kind of the biggest differentiator, and that's what makes the biggest difference, right? It's about like reinventing yourself a couple times, right? You could look at Roger's career. You can see like a few different phases of how he played and the things he was doing well, right? It was very obvious when he came back in 2017. It's like, oh, hitting over the backhand a lot more, right? You watch him play early on in his career, 2006, 7, every return was kind of a chip just down the middle, right? Then he starts hitting over more returns. Then he did the thing to bring in like taking the return early for a couple tournaments to try that and come to the net. Then you see Nadal, who was at the beginning of his career kind of just like moonballing the backhand down the line and saying like, okay, off your backhand, you're mostly gonna have to go cross. I'll win it like as soon as I can get off. Then now you see it, like the way he finished his career was hitting over that backhand cross court hard quite a bit. Still wouldn't necessarily always take it up the line as much, but he was willing to rip that one cross. That's the thing that I think is the biggest change. Novak Djokovic starts hitting second serves big sometimes, right? And this is kind of crazy. What was that like? I can't remember the year. I think it was when he was working with Todd Martin, but there was like a moment where he's like 16 double faults into a match, like these kind of things, like really struggling with it for like what is that, 2009, 10, like in
Yeah.
that moment before he broke through like a second time in 11. So all these guys have had to go through a lot of reinventions of their game to stay on top of it. And I think that's why I would say the gap is bigger because I mean, Alcaraz is kind of going through this moment where people are questioning him a little bit, like at this moment, which I think is the dumbest thing. It's just he's gonna go through that phase where the first time he came around, everything was like an upside, right? Everything was a surprise. He beats this person. There was not that pressure of like you can't lose to this person. Then you kind of ride that wave because those things don't end in a moment, right? You get on a good run, that momentum lasts. But then you kind of hit a wall and you have to see like, okay, what's the next thing? And Yannick obviously had that last year. I think he'll still be kind of riding into that, even though he had this 3 month stop, which when you stop for a while, it's actually like, look what Roger did stopping 6 months for his game after never stopping, right? I think Yannick, because of this, will almost be mind you getting rid of that mental pressure. He'll have like something extra for a bit. Now, how long will that last is a question, but um, there are moments like where the differentiator is the length of work rather than like one snapshot. Because there's a lot of players that can be the best player in the world for a week, a month, you know. But to get your ranking up to number one in the world, that's like we look at it as like 52 weeks of points, but like you never get there on just like turning it on like week one, right? It's that build up for all those weeks, those years
Yeah.
before it that makes those 52 weeks possible. And like those waves, that's an interesting thing. And I think that's the biggest differentiator why those guys, I would say, were a gap ahead of everybody else more.
Do you think it's a matter of being able to win points with low risk? So like I feel like Federer played very crafty and like very flashy, but also I think with his serve he could win a lot of points without risk, like high percentage. He could hit spots. Rafa obviously with the forehand and with the serve as well, finding the forehand in the first ball, he could win a lot of points just with pressure with the forehand. Djokovic, like you said, can like sort of guide you to where you have to start making bad choices. Murray the same. Do you think that? Because when I watch Alcaraz play, I think it looks like he plays unbelievable, but I guess the serve isn't as good as like a Federer was. But it looks like he wins a lot of points that are like, wow. Whereas I feel like those guys had like ways to win points that were just kind of like automatic and like very repeatable in a way that doesn't look like that risky for them. And I feel like Sinner has more of that than Alcaraz, where like Sinner's ball is just a joke on both sides and he moves it unreal. And he's serving really well right now. So I feel like when I watch him play, it looks like, even though it's crazy high speed, it looks risk-free to me, the way he kind of plays, sort of. Do you think that that's kind of what it is?
I think that's like another version of pretty much saying like having a baseline in your game, because if you play like 70 matches a year, the amount of matches you're going to like say, hey, I felt great about my tennis, I was doing all the things, you're lucky if it's twice in a year, right? So most
Yeah.
of the time, you're going to the point of like managing. And those things that you say that gave those players the margin, that was their way of getting through those matches, especially in the beginning of tournaments when you don't have a rhythm into matches, of these are the things they can do, knowing that without their best tennis, they can win. And that's what it's all about. And that was like the Met Pete one specifically before I won my first ATP in San Jose. And the one piece of advice probably stuck to me more than any other from player, also because he was my idol, was the best players in the world know how to win when they're not playing their best. And that is kind of the biggest difference maker, right? How many times do you watch like a broadcast of a match and they just say like, oh yeah, no, Rafa will come back in this. He'll be down 5-3 in a match. Like, oh, now he has to close it out. It's against Rafa. But then you see like them, like it'll be a guy 50 in the world playing somebody like 12 in the world. You're saying, okay, not much of a gap. And even just the commentators won't put it that way. Like, oh, okay, let's pack it up. Let's get out of here. This match is over. So that like body of work, like that, even if it sticks in like the commentator's head, it sticks into your opponent's head. Like
Yeah,
all
sure.
those things make such a big difference, and you can just see it in these small like glimpses that it's so obvious to everybody. Novak, how many times do you watch him like 2 sets to love down? It's like, okay, most people would be like, it's done, but the whole narrative, even just watching, like, oh, it's not over yet. That's the most famous.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. That like is such a common thing that these guys do, because they can just go back to this and say, I'm going to make sure you beat me. I'm not going to give you this.
He's built
And
such good credit.
and that's such a
You just believe in it to
respect
come
to
through.
you. And I'm sure if you watch Novak's matches now, um, and I haven't been watching, but if you listen, who did he play? Arnaldi? Was it Arnaldi this week in Madrid?
Madrid.
I bet you if you listen to the commentators, nobody's saying like, oh, now he has to close this out. It's against Novak, right? It's
Yeah,
like
no.
one of those reputation things, those intimidation things, takes so long to build up, but you can lose it so quickly. And that's
Oh
why I
yeah.
think like also like coming on tour in like 2011 when Novak had that crazy run, and Novak, Roger, Rafa, Andy, they were also like taking all the Master Series seriously, and every week was a series, like full on week, right? It wasn't just like honing in on the Grand Slams at that point. Like we would go around the locker room, you'd be like, okay, Andy was probably the other guy that's in the semis. During the hard courts, during the clay, at the beginning it was a lot of Ferrer, but you're like, okay, quarters is a good week, right? Because that's about where the draw ends, right? Because these guys are there every semifinal, right? So like
In the quarters, you feel like you won the tournament.
but that mentality has changed so much. And that's why I think like younger players broke through earlier, because you had three and a fourth guy, depending on surface and conditions, but that were sucking all the air out of the room. And the players knew that before they got to tournaments, right? So
Yeah.
if you know that and it's in the back of your mind, you're just gonna. It makes such a massive difference.
Thanks for
So
watching
this
this clip. If you want to watch the full episode, the link is in the description down below.